Alrighty, it's time for the next garden update. Zora Pups is sitting here just being the garden guardian, but not too much to worry about right now. Oliver's like, where are the carrots? I want to eat the carrots. Oliver likes carrots. Anyway, so over here the container garden's doing really good. So this is a good example of how big a tomato plant can get in just a little container. Lots of stuff. The lettuce is near its end. Cilantro's bolting. There's some kale, a few lime basil plants. Mint's starting to take off. Need to separate a couple of these. Like a broccoli plant died. I don't know why it happens. There's a couple more containers, but it's almost full. I have a couple plants. I'm gonna move probably some of this over here pretty soon. As it gets hotter, I want to get most of these containers into the garden or into the shade zone, because this is definitely a huge shade zone right here, but it still gets a good chunk of light. Mushrooms, I've got a few things going on. I hadn't checked in a day or two, so we got a couple little lion's mane right there. Any more in here? I'm not sure. I'll have to review. I'll hold off on reviewing right now, but so this is mostly mushroom or lion's mane, and then there are also chestnut mushrooms in here. So, but I'm not seeing way too many right now. Still have plenty of seedlings left. Let me zoom out a little bit. And these guys are all my random tomato plants that came from seed. So these are multiple varieties, but all from last year's seeds. Still have plenty of seeds and seedlings left over here. There are some blue oysters. These look like they got rained on, so they don't look as good as they could. But I need to make some stroganoff here later. I've let these sunflower patches grow. I have a couple sunflower patches, one over there, one here, and one here. And these have gotten kind of crazy already. Pile of leaves is growing. I still have a few more bags of leaves I'm gonna dump in this pile. I mix in coffee so you can see it. The coffee is mixed in. And then, yeah, like these random sunflowers are just gonna get shredded up with the lawnmower. This ever-bearing pineberry strawberries are kicking off runners in every direction. You can see all the runners here. Hops have already reached the top of the fence. They're like, we could still keep going. I probably should have thinned out some of the hops, but I'm just letting them pick back up because I tilled this whole section and had to remove everything in here. Tomatoes are doing really good. There is the first few tomatoes over here, some sun sugars, which is one of my favorites, these little orange guys. I guess I will just take this. I probably would have let it go a little bit longer, but oh well. It tastes fine. So that's the first tomato of the season. These are going to be mostly cherries over here. I'm not sure which varieties this row is. They were the random ones that came from my seeds from last year. Cilantro's bolting is almost done for the season. So all these little guys become coriander after cilantro flowers up. I have a few things over here. So I had to pull up a bunch of my broccoli plants because I got these little guys right here. And these are harlequin bugs. And they attack broccoli plants. So all kale and broccoli have these spots on the leaves because of harlequin bugs, because they suck out the nutrients from them. So they are invasive and will destroy kale and broccoli plants or anything related to that variety. Over here, everything's looking good. The carrots have like little red spots in the middle. Plenty of little pollinators keeping around. I'm not seeing way too many bees, but there's a few things. Wasps like them, and there's a few other things running through here. So this section, I'll probably pick these out here soon once they start bolting completely. So tomatoes are looking good. This one I found a giant hornworm on. I'm not seeing any others, but you have to look for the signs of like that the top of the leaves have been eaten off. So there's branches missing here. There's probably one in here. There usually is. Over here I have the peppers. I'm still finishing up the mulch. I haven't gotten around to completing the mulch, but we've been rainy and it hasn't been too hot, so that's not a big deal. But it's gonna bring all the mulch to this end, and I'm filling in a lot of extra spots with marigolds and basil. So like right here is a marigold, but like these giant freaking massive squash plants are eating into my pepper zone. So we'll see how that fares. But my Three Sisters is doing awesome. We're now starting to see some squash in here, so it's going to be really hard to figure out what all is going on in here. But there's some beans, the squash or the corn is sticking out of the top, and I'll just keep working on those guys as it comes along. So I'm trying to look like, so there are some squash bug, probably eggs. I'm going to squash them all, but there's probably dozens of them, if not hundreds of them already in here. So squash bugs are a major issue in Texas. So I don't know how long I'll get squash, but I should have a big abundance for a little while because they're just growing everywhere. But I also having to go through here and pick weeds and stuff. So there's plenty of weeds in here I need to pick. This section is mostly the squash on this row, but it didn't fill in completely. So I'm now adding extra plants, like there's a basil. I have a few more spots over here, and there's another marigold I've added. This row, I never had any direct plans on this row, so I wanted to do more eggplant, but I don't have any right now. So I just added tomatoes and peppers and some tomatillos. So tomatillos will be on this row. Cucumbers took a while to take off. Like, they didn't start in the ground because the soil temperature was too cold, most likely. So now a few of them finally took off, but I have to pick a bunch of weeds. But those are a couple of cucumbers I ended up buying because they were already sprouted. But over here was like the last section of cucumbers I planted, and some other melons, I think. And now all of them finally sprouted, but I need to start on tomorrow splitting those up because I've like taken some of those and moved them around over here. This section is going to be all my melons. I'm already starting to see over here, these are cucumber beetles, and these guys are not friends either. He fell right there, but I'm sorry, but sometimes you have to get rid of the pests, and those guys will eat my food and my plants, so they lose the battle. Over here though, there should be quite a few like melons going from all these. Potatoes are looking awesome. I'll need to pick some more weeds out of there. The section with basil over here is doing good. So all these little basil plants are starting to rock on. So I usually pick the tops of the basil off so they don't go into flower. It just branches out the size of the plants. But these are like, if you want to save your seeds, you can never stop growing basil if you just throw them out in the garden. They'll sprout back every year usually after this. I'm not seeing way too much random basil, but it'll kick in as it gets hotter. The radishes are definitely basically done, I think. So I can just go down here and find all sorts of radishes probably and some other plants. So I'll see what I can do with those this weekend. This is always my enemy right here. This whole section have a whole bunch of Bermuda grass just entangled, and when it keeps going, then it just takes over. So I have to be careful there. Where's a random tomato plant I planted? I planted some ginger right here, but I don't know if that's going to take off because it wasn't like sprouting, so I don't know if it was going to do anything. Quick word on the compost. So I have some compost going right now. This is doing pretty good. You look in here, and like this was a mix of my grass and some leaves and dead plants from last year and coffee and mushroom compost blocks. So it's already rocking along. This section I need to rotate. That's a big bag of Starbucks trash, but mainly coffee grounds. And then over here, this is basically complete. So I'm gonna start putting this in buckets so I can rotate this in here and then rotate this one over here. And then I'll just add a couple more crates because I have about 8 of these crates ready to go for garden and compost stuff. So I'll fill them up as much as I can during the season. So all that shredded leaves over there will end up becoming compost. And same thing with the mushroom compost blocks, because I'm not getting that many mushrooms right now. So if there's any signs of mold on the mushrooms or like any weird bacterial growth or anything, then I take those blocks and commit them to the getting shredded in the garden. But if they're still growing, I try to not remove all of them. So this section over here is asparagus and catnip. That's basically it. There's a carrot over there. There's a couple other plants. But otherwise, like, these are all new growth asparagus that I planted from seed this year, and they're not going to do anything until like 2 years later. Here's a random weed that I always find annoying, because these guys, if you pick them by the top, they're not going to do anything. You have to dig down and pick them by the root ball, because it has like a little ball that if you pull it up, it'll just leave the root stem behind. But if you let them get a hold of everything, then they'll spread in every direction. Like they will travel like mint does. But it's not mint because it's crap. But also right next to all these guys, like there's a little asparagus that may have been from seeds from last year. I may have planted it, I forgot. It seems like it's probably just from seeds. And then catnip is everywhere, so I can pick up catnip and I'll repot these guys. So you can repot catnip pretty well, but if it's like this size, it doesn't like to be repotted. It's transplant shock, so I don't think those big ones will survive. But there's honestly so much in here, I don't need it in every direction because this is supposed to be my asparagus section. But anyways, so I'll rip these up, repot them if I can, if they die, whatever. But it's taking over. One of my neighbor's cat passed away last month, and he was super awesome. One of my favorite neighbors. Like, he lived behind me. So Wesley's cat Playboy would always come playing out in the garden, hang out, and even with my dogs would just like come visit and spend his afternoon in catnip. So I'm really bummed about that because Playboy was an awesome kitty, and I don't know what happened to him. But otherwise, that's life. So over here I have some potatoes in this thing. This is mainly just for extra dirt, but I had extra potatoes. Some of them sprouted, some did not. There's a tomato in that bucket, but those were buckets just of pure compost from the garden. This is Sophie. She's an old girl, likes to run around, but she's just old, so she does old girl things. But yeah, otherwise, asparagus is now tapering off since it's already into May. Like, eventually it just ferns out, so I'm not seeing any new spears hardly on my biggest plant. So it's just gonna fern out and kick out some seeds and stuff, then I can take those. But otherwise, that's mostly everything I've got over here. There's a few more things going on, but that's the May update for now. And like you can see over here, this section I have a bunch of lettuce, but now it's starting to bolt. I need to eat some of that this weekend before I lose it. And otherwise, that's kind of current scenario. I still have some more space to plant. I need to transfer my cucumbers around and a few other things, but otherwise close to max capacity. So I'm just staying busy, and I just need to finish mulch, pick at weeds, and fill in any extra spots, and then just let it ride for a while. All right.